What's good, YouTube? It's your boy, Blue Blood Sports TV, back at y'all with another one. So, we have some interesting news, as the World Boxing Organization has decided to now make sure and assure that newly crowned undefeated unified lightweight world champion Australian star boxer George Kambosos Jr. will have to face off against Olympic two-time gold medalist, three-division world champion, former unified lightweight world champion superstar boxer VASILY Lomachenko. So George Kambosos Jr., 20 wins, no losses, no draw, 10 wins by way of knockout, 28 years of age, 5'9" with a 69-inch arm reach. VASILY Lomachenko, 16 wins, 2 losses, no draws, 11 wins by way of knockout, 33 years of age, 5'6" with a 64-inch arm reach. With that said, we heard yesterday that George Kambosos Jr., VASILY Lomachenko have come to an agreement that Lomachenko has signed a 2-fight deal to face George Kambosos Jr. once June 5th in Australia, and the second fight, should he win, would have to be in Australia, a rematch with George Kambosos Jr. The fight that was supposed to be on the table was the massive Undisputed showdown between George Kambosos Jr. and undefeated WBC lightweight world champion superstar boxer Devin "The Dream" Haney. 27 wins, no loss, no draw, 15 wins by way of knockout. He's 23 years of age, 5'8" with a 72-inch arm reach. With that said, that would be for official Undisputed. He's the WBC lightweight champion. But since you had the World Boxing Council president, Mauricio Suleiman, and the board of 32 members decide to agree and state that George Kambosos Jr., the franchise champion, was indeed the undisputed champion, well, that gave merit to George Kambosos Jr. to drag his feet with a fight with Devin Haney, as George Kambosos Jr. changed all his headline to all his social media to Undisputed from Unified. Initially, George Kambosos Jr., he stated he knew he had to go through Devin Haney to be Undisputed, and now he has since changed that thought pattern, and George Kambosos feels like he's undisputed because, well, the WBC, they validated it. Okay, so with that said, now the WBO has ordered Devin Haney versus George Kambosos Jr. as a mandate. So the fight has to happen. Okay? And so with that said, we know Matchroom CEO and promoter Eddie Hearn, who co-promotes and works with DHP, Devin Haney Promotions, father trainer manager, CEO Bill Haney. He announced, Eddie Hearn that is, that the WBO has ordered they begin negotiations, that he is still indeed trying to work to get a Devin Haney fight, but essentially the ball has been dropped. We know Devin Haney, yesterday he came out and he stated that he would take whatever deal was on the table for VASILY Lomachenko. And immediately, to combat that, the WBO comes out and they state this is a mandation, and George Kambosos Jr. doesn't have a choice now. So now the fight has to be ordered and come to fruition. Okay, we know Lou DiBella, promoter of George Kambosos Jr., never wanted to negotiate with Devin Haney. He never wanted to do business and fight Devin Haney. He immediately, after George Kambosos shocked the world, beating former unified lightweight world champion superstar boxer Teofimo Lopez, November 27th, Madison Square Garden, New York. After he beat him, okay, just a few days later, he did an interview on the Boxing Voice, and Lou DiBella immediately told the world that Devin Haney was an email champion. They didn't have much interest in Devin Haney. Devin Haney's not a superstar. He doesn't sell. It's not a big draw. He started talking about the numbers of Devin Haney. So it was apparent. It was abundantly clear. He made it very apparent that they didn't have any interest in negotiating with Devin Haney. Okay, and then he made it clear that their number one objective was securing a fight with undefeated three-division world champion superstar boxer Gervonta Tank Davis, who is undefeated, 26 wins, no losses, no draw, 24 big wins by way of knockout. He is 5'5" with a 67-inch arm reach at 27 years of age. he is viewed as the cash cow from junior welterweight on down. So understandably that you would look for Gervonta Tank Davis as the next opponent because he's seen as the best 135 pounder in the world. Then he stated that obviously he has vested interest in IBF lightweight former world champion Richard Commey because Richard Commey is a Lou DiBella fighter. And Richard Commey was fighting Vasily Lomachenko. So he pointed to that fight as another option. Then he pointed to undefeated rising Mexican superstar title contender King Ryan Garcia as another option. Okay, so it was apparent from the very beginning they didn't have much interest in negotiating with Devin Haney to make this fight come to fruition. Although Devin Haney came face to face with George Kambosos Jr. and Devin Haney and George Kambosos Jr. verbally agreed that this is the fight that should be happening next. And George Kambosos, he said, it got to make sense, though. It got to make sense. And it has to take place in Australia. And Devin Haney, he stated, I'll fight you on Jupiter if I have to, as long as I get an opportunity to fight for Undisputed. And George Kambosos Jr., he agreed, okay? But then he changed his status. He changed his mind. You can see the contradictions coming. And so here's why I say the ball was dropped on the part of Eddie Hearn as Matchroom and DAZN, okay? Because they knew, just like we all knew, that they didn't have much interest in fighting Devin Haney. And so they weren't going to get a normal deal done, okay? Devin Haney is the highest revenue grosser from junior welterweight on down, only behind Gervonta Tank Davis. He's actually made more than Teofimo Lopez, George Kambosos Jr., and Ryan Garcia put together in one fight, okay? So with that said, we know that he's looking to get his normal share of the pie, okay? Well, now that he stated he'll take the deal Lomachenko took, and now you have Chris Mannix, and now you have, media members going to come out and say Vasily Lomachenko was willing to take whatever George Kambosos Jr. and Lou DiBella was giving them to make sure they secure those belts in a fight. Well, that's easier said than done when you have a guy who is the higher grosser, okay? In the case of Floyd Mayweather and Oscar De La Hoya, it was completely different. Oscar De La Hoya was the bigger grosser. Oscar De La Hoya made more money. He was seen as the cash cow. He was the pay-per-view superstar, okay? Floyd Mayweather was not. He was not making more money than Oscar De La Hoya. He wasn't the pay-per-view superstar that Oscar De La Hoya was. So he understood he had to take more money, less money, to be able to be in a position that Oscar De La Hoya was in. In this case, George Kambosos Jr. is not making near as much money as Devin Haney has been making. Okay, his highest payday was $1.2 million, if that, in his last fight that oddly enough came from DAZN, Matchroom, and Eddie Hearn for his fight with Teofimo Lopez. That was a pot of $3.2 million. Okay, and Teofimo Lopez was the A side, and he got the lion's share of the pie. Okay, so if he got about $2 million for that fight and 3.2 was on the table, George Kambosos got about 1.2 million. So which means Devin Haney was reported to have made $3.5 million. Okay, so he's made more than that entire pot put together. Okay, and Teofimo Lopez, he stated on record that he made $650,000 in his fight versus Vasily Lomachenko. Okay, that's what he brought home. So he didn't make much money against Lomachenko. Okay, Lomachenko's never fought on pay-per-view. So it's easier to say Devin Haney's supposed to take less amount of money to fight George Kambosos Jr. when George Kambosos Jr. is relatively unknown. Okay, he got his status over beating Teofimo Lopez and shocking the world. Nobody knew who he was prior to the Teofimo Lopez fight. And when Teofimo Lopez and his team announced that they were going to entertain fighting George Kambosos Jr., the fans were irate and started to say he was avoiding the best fighters in the world, and he was cherry picking, including his legendary promoter, top-ranked CEO and promoter, Bob Arum. Bob Arum didn't like it. Bob Arum felt like Teofimo Lopez and George Kambosos Jr. allegedly colluded together to make sure they got the biggest amount of money possible to stage their fight and not come to an agreement, as George Kambosos was the IBF mandatory. And it went to a purse bid, and Bob Arum was 100% correct, allegedly in that aspect, because we unforeseen Matchroom and DAZN came in and outbid Top Rank, who bid $2.3 million. They bid $3.2 million, And then Triller came in and bid a whopping $6 million. So it went to Triller, then it went to the next highest bidder. So Bob Arum, he was not high on George Kambosos Jr. He stated that George Kambosos Jr. is not a good fighter. George Kambosos Jr., is going to get run over by Teofimo Lopez. He's not a big draw and nobody knows who he is. And so many people were upset that he chose, that being Teofimo Lopez, to fight George Kambosos Jr. So now everybody's expecting Devin Haney to just bow down and accept whatever Lou DiBella and George Kambosos Jr. is offering because George Kambosos Jr. now holds the belt. Okay, understood that you do have to take, you do have to take some. It's going to take some sacrifices to get the deal done because he does have the belts. But for everybody to report that he should just significantly bow down and take whatever they're offering him to make the fight happen is absurd. And not to mention George Kambosos Jr., he's on record stating that it's not about money, it's about legacy and entertainment to the fans. And he was his own promoter, but it was clear that Lou DiBella had no interest in negotiating. So, again, the ball was dropped, in my opinion, because Devin Haney clearly is looking to fight for legacy, not money. And yes, this would have bolstered his resume moving forward, his status, and his his brand should he have been victorious against George Kambosos Jr. for Undisputed and then move up in weight. So the WBO has ordered it just too late on the part of Devin Haney, it seems like. With the WBO now ordering it, and Devin Haney saying he'll take whatever Vasily Lomachenko took, to get a deal done. So we still got to see how this unfolds and plays out. But according to the WBO, the fight has to happen between these two, or George Kambosos is going to be stripped. But that's all I got for y'all. Make sure you hit the like button. Drop a comment in the comment section. Let me know what y'all think. Y'all already know what it is. It's your boy Blue. Blue Blood Sports TV. Hate, like, comment, and subscribe. You haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the bell icon, and get all the new notifications. Follow me on Instagram at Blue Blood Sports TV, all one word. Y'all already know what it is. Shout out to the entire LDBC. Shout out to New Media. Shout out to Black Media Row. Make sure you like and share these videos. That's all I got for y'all. Peace.
Hi, my name is Heather the Heat Hardy, and you're watching Blue Blood Sports TV.